This conference will now be recorded.
To
This
everybody,
conference
glad you're
will now
here.
be recorded.
Okay, welcome to everybody that came today. Can everybody see everybody on the screen that is signed in? And if you can, we'll just move on from there. Next item is the Career Technical Education Academy request for funding.
Mayor, let's turn that over to Dr. Capps to get us started.
I was working that way slowly. Dr. Cap.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Gary. We really appreciate your giving us the opportunity to bring you up to date on the CTE Academy. You've graciously allowed us to make 2 presentations to you about the Academy. You'll remember that in the first one, I provided you with an overview of the purpose and scope of the Academy, and then in the second one, Jason Ferguson, our Associate Vice President, provided you with more specific information about the programs of study we hope to offer at the Academy. If you can think back to that first meeting where I introduced you to the concept, you'll recall that I alerted you at the outset that I wasn't coming to ask you for money. That just to allay any anxiety that you might feel. I can't say that today because today we're coming with our hat in our hands asking for your support, really in 2 different forms. We hope to be able to secure your financial support, and we also need some letters of endorsement from you. And we need that because we've decided to advance the Academy with a Go Virginia grant. In fact, quite a sizable Go Virginia grant. And if you're familiar with that program, you know that it requires some matching funds from the localities that will benefit from the initiative. So Chris Bryant is going to provide you with more specific information about the grant proposal that we'll be submitting to Go Virginia. But I want to thank you in advance for your consideration. I think we all agreed before that the CTE Academy was vital to the economic interest of our region. If it was important then, it's even more important now with the economic downturn and unprecedented unemployment. And just to remind you, the CTE Academy will address those needs by providing dual enrollment opportunities, chances for skills training with recent high school graduates and adult learners, who tend to be the workers who are predominantly out of employment right now. So for all those reasons, we believe that the CTE Academy is of vital importance to the region now more than ever. And we hope that you'll see fit to support it financially and, as I said, with your endorsements. So without any further background from me, Chris, I'll turn it over to you. Chris is going to be our lead presenter today.
Happy to do that, Dr. Capps, and I apologize to each of you if I create any feedback as I'm calling in and using audio on a handheld device. If Dr. Capps before alluded to that we would come back, I guess I could be referred to as the heavy. I'm the arm twister for today, and so I'm happy to engage with you to share our progress. As Dr. Capps has alluded, we're interested in pursuing a Go Virginia grant in total of $400,000. It would be a 2-to-1 grant with Go Virginia providing the 66%. We're actually asking them to cover $266,000, and then we would need a match of $134,000. That $134,000 would be our responsibility to raise to cover the 2 salaries that we believe are paramount to making this academy successful. So for 2 positions for 2 years, we believe that'll be about $400,000 all included. And so again, as Dr. Capps has foretold, we're after, over the course of 2 years, $134,000 in matching assistance, and then also your letters of endorsement per county, town, or city. So we're very much interested in applying. To give you a little bit more background, we have shared our letter of intent with the staff administration at Go Virginia, and they have sent us back information in a very favorable way. And we've also had a conversation to strengthen our case for support. So we're excited about the opportunity, and we feel encouraged that this will be received in a good manner. So there is a quick turnaround. We are looking to submit a completed application by July the 8th, so not more than a week or two away. So we're interested in your assistance and a letter of endorsement that says that not only do you believe in this in sort of a workforce way, but also in a way that you would provide financial assistance. So Gary, you don't have to write the check today, but whenever this group would like to facilitate that, we would certainly appreciate any help in securing those matching funds. Any questions about our Go Virginia grant application or the process that we'll pursue?
Yes, I have a question. Is this also being worked through the school superintendents? Are they coming to the boards of, are they going to their school boards? Or are they coming to the boards of supervisors seeking endorsements and funding?
So with the original work that was done by Dr. Greg Sullivan, a portion of that work, so we did receive a planning grant just under $300,000 that led us through a 12-month preparation grant, in which is what you've received information from Jason and John. At the conclusion of that, all 5 of those local superintendents were very eager to see this happen and believed it would strengthen their programs and, of course, our industry programs as well. Each of those 5 superintendents, we do feel, will provide a letter of endorsement. When we originally pursued this opportunity, we thought that the G3 funding would be available. Obviously, with the pandemic and both the economic and health downturns, we're afraid that the G3 funding is not going to be available, whether it be now or potentially in the next few years. So with that, we certainly want our superintendents to be engaged, and they have indicated that they will be endorsing this project. We just really don't know to what extent they might be able to help financially, if at all. Dr. Capps, anything to add to that?
No, that's an accurate statement. Robert, I'm not sure how they might approach that within their respective localities. They're all highly supportive of the CTE Academy. It may be true that they're willing to contribute some modest amounts from their own budgets, just as they did when we stood up the regional STEM Academy. But I don't know that for sure.
Well, I can tell you that, contributions or pledges at this time is really hard, of course, after we've all cut our budgets way back just to see what's going to happen. But, letters of endorsement are fine. Are you, Chris or John, available to come present at our board? Our board meeting is on the 2nd of July. If we're going to meet your 2nd of July, no, it's on the 7th of July. Okay, so if you want it by the 8th, I need you to be there, make your pitch. I could use a draft of what it is the words are that you want the board to say, because my agenda closes tomorrow. So I can get it on the agenda, and I can schedule you to come and present. But I've got to have whatever documents we want to stick in front of them by close of business tomorrow.
Dean, that's terrific. We will be available on the 7th, and we already have prepared a draft that I can send you immediately following I hang up.
Perfect. So I'll put you on the agenda. We meet at 3 o'clock.
Chris, what is sacred about the time frame of the 8th?
That's when the quarterly grant applications are due for Go Virginia. So there are obviously opportunities quarterly for us to submit our information. The next window closes on July 8th.
I think that's a pretty aggressive time frame for the scope of the project.
And for this group, who moves at the speed of government.
Well, we're familiar with the state bureaucracy too, Dean. That moves even slower than local government.
Chris, is it possible to submit your material on the 8th without designating where this match is coming from?
It is possible that we can submit the application. Of course, we want it to be as strong as possible. And, if that means that a September deadline is more appropriate, then if we don't feel like that we have a robust case of support, we can certainly defer toward a later window. With that being said, we do believe that both in the school systems, we feel that with this group, this organization, and of course with our local industry leaders, that we can fulfill our obligations for the match. We want to present that case in the detailed and professional manner that we should. So if September is the more appropriate time frame, we can make that decision next week. And of course, with the approval of Dr. Capps and others, if we're just not ready, we'll have to punt until September. But it is an aggressive window.
So this is Bonnie. I have a couple of thoughts, you guys. One, Gary, could we take this match, since all of us seem to be on board with this, out of our PDC fund balance and make life a lot easier on all of us? So that's one thought. The second thought is, I'm curious whether any part of the match is COVID eligible. So the city has lumped like $2 million into, it's either $1 million or $2 million. I think it might be $2 million into a bucket for economic development. And that is for grants to help businesses. We might have written it broadly enough that we could take some amount out of that as the city of Lynchburg's contribution. So that is a thought. So I just put the first one out there, and if we have $134,000 that we could take out of our fund balance, this is a one-time 2-year contribution. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Bonnie, this is Gary. I think the answer is yes. There's that money in the fund balance what the PDC has that you could use that. For the COVID-19 part, you'd have to explore with Chris whether you could get it spent by the end of December.
Oh yeah, that's a problem. You're right.
These pieces of it anyway, but the first part is yes, that's always an option. Chris,
So
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about what the private sector may bring to the table.
Gary, how much is our fund balance? Do you know that offhand?
About 750,000. We need about 600 in reserve, 500 in reserve. So the 134, if you want to pledge the entire amount, you'd be okay.
I think this, since this is so regional in scope. Go ahead, Robert. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of I like where Bonnie is coming from. To be honest with you, when I got the agenda and I was reading it over, when I saw $134,000, maybe I read it incorrectly. That's actually what I thought we were discussing today, was whether or not this was going to be coming from the PDC fund balance. I wasn't prepared. If I knew that ahead of time, that it was going to be a local government contribution, then, we could prepare for this a couple of weeks ago at this deadline. At least from Bedford County's perspective, I mean, this type of endeavor and the job training and all that type of stuff. This is exactly what our Board of Supervisors wants to see happen. But as you mentioned, with the fiscal constraints that we have with continually to cut and shave back and be ultra conservative right now in this environment, even though this is something that our board is very excited about, I just don't know about our local government being able to contribute. But I mean, I'm very much in favor of us continuing to discuss this match, or a portion, a high percentage of this match coming from the PDC.
Another,
Frank, can you all hear me?
yes.
Yeah, so I'm sort of like Robert. I thought the conversation today was about, do we want to hit the PDC up for 134 grand? My concern with that is a sustainability question. So even if we go in this year, put in 134,000, get a $400,000 program going for 2 years, what's the sustainability plan after that? And will it come back to the PDC or localities later to be an ongoing funding need?
I'll address that, Frank. Yeah. I don't think there are any sustainability issues. As Chris said earlier, the G3 initiative was, quote, paused by the governor because of a projected revenue shortfall in the state. And we assume that that's true. Well, it's likely true for this year and may well be true into the next fiscal year. But you'll remember that the General Assembly was willing to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in G3 before the pandemic, and we have every reason to believe that that funding will be forthcoming, assuming that things return to some semblance of normalcy. And with those tuition dollars, which would be generated through the G3 program, the CTE Academy would essentially be self-sustaining.
Great, thank you. And then I was just curious about the timeline for the academy, with everything seemingly so up in the air about how schools, universities open, go forward, what is the timing on this thing? What do you guys know? When will it be, is it even going to be ready for prime time if nobody comes back to school?
It will be ready. I don't know that we'll be broadcasting on prime time this fall. Some semblance of the CTE Academy will be launched this fall because we'll be offering the programs that are housed within the CTE Academy. One of the thrusts of the initiative was to expand the CTE programming that we offer. And that may be problematic in the short term, but we will be offering the curricula that we had planned to offer, that we've been offering all along. The approach that we're taking for the fall is that general education and college transfer classes will be taught primarily online, but we're bringing students in small groups right now to complete hands-on skills training that they weren't able to complete in the spring and that they'll need to complete in the summer. And we'll be pursuing the same approach in the fall. So the CTE Academy will be alive to some extent in the fall, but it's certainly not going to hit its stride in the fall. And for that reason, I'd be inclined to say let's not push this on July the 8th. That's a very aggressive time frame, not only to secure your support financially, but also to get those letters of endorsement. I probably should have announced this in the beginning to eliminate any possible conflict of interest, but I do serve on the Go Virginia board, on the Region 2 Council. And I've seen quite a few applications that were given a preliminary nod of approval, but which weren't ready for prime time themselves and which were then deferred and solicited again. And I don't think we want to do that. We prefer to have our application approved at the first pass. And for that reason, Chris, I think it might be better if we were just to punt, to use your terminology right now, and make sure that we've got everything in order before we have to scramble to meet that July the 8th deadline.
John and Chris, have you asked for any money from the school systems or just letters of endorsement?
We haven't explicitly asked them for money. a couple of the superintendents volunteered to offer some support, but that was before. Now we're dealing in the hereafter. So I'm not sure what their current stance would be. And Robert, to address your earlier comment, if the PDC were willing to support this as a large contribution, I think that would be great. But even very modest contributions from the localities would speak volumes to the Go Virginia Council as it reviews the application. And that's not to say that that support would be crucial to the success of the proposal, but it would be helpful.
So John, you might recall that I think for the training center Go Virginia grant, the localities supported that through its contribution to the PDC. So in the end, a lot of the, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, contributions to fund balance come from the localities. So Lynchburg would be happy to write that letter saying, the city of Lynchburg supports the academy through its contribution to the PDC. So you would still get our support, but the dollars would come from the PDC. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would be great.
Chris, in talking with the Go Virginia staff, did they give you any indication about any requirements for local government funds? Or if your match could come from any source?
So our match can come from any source, including sort of industry support, which is one of the things that I think you were asking about just a moment ago. As Dr. Capps has confirmed, they really love that written and financial support from the localities. And so I think that is imperative, which is why we're in front of you for a third time, because we believe that's so vitally important.
The schools might also have, so the schools have fewer strings attached to their COVID money than the localities have. They have, I believe, a 2-year spend down, unlike us who have to spend sort of the manna from heaven with more strings attached than Pinocchio, only have till December to spend our money. So the schools might be a financial partner more so than the city of Lynchburg or Amherst County or Bedford.
And Bonnie, we can certainly explore that with the superintendents. Your CARES funding must be like ours. Ours came not with strings attached, but with cables and ropes attached.
I understand. And did somebody answer the question about how much you were going to ask of the business community? Or are you asking the business community?
We are indeed asking the business community. As Dr. Capps has alluded, not only will this need to operate into sustainability, but also there will be additional equipment that we need to purchase and instruction. We certainly will gain some of those from the FTEs that are enrolled as we enhance our program, but we certainly are going to need industry help, not only for continued salaries, but also for equipment and scholarship needs. So industry will certainly play a huge part in the funds that we need to raise, not only for this match, but also after this match. So it's a continuing operation of fundraising to ensure not only the facility and the equipment is ready, that it has proper instruction, that it has scholarships as well. Our students are going to have great needs, which is the primary thing that our foundation is sort of charged with, is ensuring that our students break down barriers to tuition. And so, Bonnie, to answer your question, we'll certainly have more needs that need to be addressed, not only for industry, but all takers.
And
Thank
Bonnie,
you.
just for the sake of full disclosure, we're not prepared to make a public announcement yet, but we have secured a lead gift from a large local employer, a 6-figure gift. And that money is most valuable to us, as Chris says, for the purchase of equipment, because we can use that funding as the match that we have to have for Tobacco Commission funding.
Okay, thank you. So does the commission need to make a recommendation, or do you guys want to talk offline about this? Where do we go from here?
I thought, Bonnie, this is Frank, is that if the executive committee wants to recommend proceeding, if September is the timeline, don't we have time to do that, Gary? Make a recommendation to the PDC. We sort of empowered the executive committee to act when the PDC didn't have time to, as I recall, but I don't remember our meeting schedule.
Well, we will be meeting throughout the summer if we have topics to address, so that we can bring it up either at a full board meeting or at a future executive committee meeting.
And if you would like for us to drop off the call so that you can discuss this privately, we'll be glad to do that.
It sounds like there's broad conceptual support, but I think this is a full board decision. So can we get Dr. Capps and Chris Bryant back with us when we have the full board and have that come as a recommendation potentially from the executive committee?
We are meeting electronically on the 16th of July at 5 o'clock with the full group. So that would be the next window.
So Gary, do you need a formal motion that we are proposing to the full board to take $134,000 from our fund balance to support the academy going forward, and then asking John and Chris, as Sarah said, to be on the call to answer any questions, maybe make a brief presentation to the full board?
Well, motion would certainly get the discussion going in terms of whatever that right number might be and how to structure that regarding any other sources, like from money from the localities.
Okay, Ms. Bonnie, was that a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
And I have a second from Ms. Carter. Okay, is there any further discussion on this, on the motion? Okay, there being none, we'll do this like we did on the last meeting. All those opposed, please signify. There being none opposed, it will pass, and we will bring it before the July 16th full PDC meeting for a discussion and approval from the board at that point.
Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you.
All right, Gary, do we want to move on to the next item?
Yes, thank you. And community college folks, you're welcome to stay. Welcome to drop off. We are talking about workforce development, so you may want to stick around. But we have, it looks like for the next two items, two grants that will be coming to the PDC over the next several months, maybe over a year. But I want to give you a heads up that the Workforce Development Board will be tasked over the next 6 months to 12 months with coming up with a new and improved strategic plan, a requirement and mandate by the state that is done every 4 years. And 2020 is our renewal time. What I want to do is to make a little bit bigger process than has been normally done, and get some good community input, good stakeholder input. And it may involve an outside consultant service, and that may involve an outside grant to help us do that. Our workforce board is a committee of the PDC and not necessarily a freestanding organization. So they cannot on their own apply for a grant. So it would have to come through the PDC. Ben, do you have any discussion about what this strategic plan might look like, or what it would incorporate?
Yeah, so this really, at the state level, they refer to it as our local plan. But we last did one 4 years ago. We were we are required by regulation to do one every 4 years. Quite frankly, I consider it to be a strategic plan, but this is really the vehicle in which we reach out to all of our localities, input from our stakeholders in government, but also just as critically, getting the information that we need from our business employer stakeholders. So this is something that we try to go through, as I mentioned, every 4 years to give us some perspective as to where we need to establish our priorities, what we need to be doing differently, what we need to be doing better. And so this will be an opportunity really to kind of revisit where we are. And I think given the challenges we're going through right now with the COVID, it's certainly a chance to look at how we can do things differently and hopefully do things more effectively. I think probably one of my biggest concerns is, ideally in this kind of a process, we would be getting input in focus meetings and small groups, various sector groups, for example. But we may have to be able to do that virtually. And I would say the anticipated cost for something like this could be anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000. And the state, the initial requirement was that we have something like this in place by the end of the year. With the COVID issues going on, we may have extension. We haven't really been given a lot of guidance yet.
Thank you, Ben. And so at this point, I'm sorry, did you have something else to add on? At this point, we're not taking any action, not asking you to do anything, but just as a FYI heads up that this is coming, and we may well come back to you in the next several months with some plans and more details. In your agenda packet was an outline of what the study, the strategic plan might look like, things we want to accomplish, and your input on that is valuable as well. Last call, Ben, anything else to talk about on that one?
No, nothing else at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, we're ready to go to number 4 about a regional dispatch, alternate dispatch and training facility.
Hey, Gary, can we back up real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I got questions for Ben I wanted to get to.
Yeah, just I don't know if it's a question, maybe more of a comment. Just considering some of the conversations and other items that are going on in our country and our region right now, one thing that we may want to bake into this phase 1 review and study is some sort of equity and inclusivity component. I think that would be an important aspect, as if we're doing a 4-year, workforce update and strategic plan. I think we would be missing an opportunity if we did not have some sort of area in there that addresses, equity and inclusivity in terms of how we're reaching out to various communities and populations within our region.
Thank you. I certainly agree, 100%.
Okay, there's nothing further. We'll move on to item 4, the regional alternate dispatch and training facility. Gary?
Thank you. As you may recall, the radio board is also set up as a committee of the Planning District Commission and not necessarily a freestanding entity. And so if they want outside or additional grant money, it has to go through our organization. They've been talking for about a year now on the concept of an alternate dispatch center, where we currently have one regional system that serves the infrastructure to make the calls and the radio signals happen. But we have 3 dispatch centers, one in each one of our locations. And as we move Campbell into our system, that will be a 4th dispatch center. In the event that that dispatch center becomes unusable, such as if a technology goes down or a COVID-19 event, then they have to go to an alternative site. Currently, there's an alternative site at the Armory. In the past, they've also used other folks' dispatch centers to dispatch for that jurisdiction that had a technical problem. So the conversation around the table at the radio board is, what about if we set up a facility that could also be used, in addition as an alternate center, as a training facility for our dispatchers? Because many of these systems use the same software and dispatching protocols. So Matt Perkins has been working with the radio board for the last several years, and it will be over the next year identifying some technical assistance to develop what specifications might be needed for an alternative dispatch center. And that, particularly pursuing a COVID-19 grant, it might go through the PDC as well. Matt, do you have any additional information to share with the group?
No, I think you've covered it, Gary. The impetus was, at any point that if any of the current dispatch centers are compromised in any way, that there is an alternate site to go to. Though the system was built, as Gary mentioned, where should one site be compromised, that other sites can pick up or dispatch for on a temporary basis. It's certainly not any kind of long-term situation. And in addition to that, any type of alternate dispatch center that would be potentially created and thought about would have to be geodiverse enough that it would potentially not be compromised from a natural disaster standpoint from where the other dispatch centers currently are. So that factors into that. The other thought of the radio board too was due to the obviously importance of dispatchers to the emergency dispatch or emergency communications system. It is difficult to, I guess, maintain employment in those. It's a high turnover rate in those areas and for those positions. So to have a training center where they are trained specifically, on the types of equipment that are used in the region, but potentially statewide, because it is a statewide issue for those positions. I have not been able to find in my research any other program that exists for training dispatchers, but to essentially create a pipeline where Amherst Dispatch, Bedford, or Lynchburg, Campbell would be able to draw from a pool of qualified dispatchers already. They often, like other positions, they will tend to kind of move in and out of various positions within the kind of regional emergency field. So whether they go to the state police or they come back locally, or there's just a general movement of them. So to create that pipeline for trained dispatch professionals is really something that the radio board members were particularly keen on, knowing that the money, the time, the effort it takes to bring in, to train a dispatch person, individual is immense. So to cut that back on the local side and to kind of expand that on a more regional training side is definitely beneficial for the whole system.
So you got my wheels turning. We're talking about two different things, maybe three. One is an emergency backup location, and the other is a training program that I assume would keep the emergency backup location busy with classes, courses, teaching people. And then when it was needed, it would empty out of classes, and then the displaced dispatchers from whatever locality would move in. And of course, all right, so that calls for a full up set of equipment and a center. And it also calls for a trainer or a class. Now, maybe that's something that the CVCC could operate, and simply the teacher operates remotely. But you don't quite solve the problem of a dispersed locality, a dispersed location. You know, all your eggs are in one basket. A thought that comes to mind where everything that could still be accomplished, except everyone in the same classroom, would be to use your funding that you found to simply add another station to each of the existing dispatch stations, so that there is a training seat there at each location. Your students could rotate around, and even the locality could invite trainers in, and it would give a place for, you know, when our dispatch center goes down, we send at least, you know, so Campbell picks up for us, but Campbell doesn't have the familiarity with our location that we do. So we send one of our dispatchers over to their empty seat, and that dispatcher can assist the others who are already working there to respond to calls from our locality. Anyway, that's my idea. Rather than a location, you disperse the money and use the existing locations and make them better suited for increasing our number.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. Any other thoughts or comments? It is not unusual for a community college to run such a program in metropolitan areas. So it is possible.
And Gary, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but if you believe that there's a role for CVCC in this project, we'd certainly welcome the opportunity to serve the region in this way. I'm sure that Jason was listening attentively during that presentation, and he's already begun to formulate a possible program that we might be able to employ.
Yeah, I didn't learn. I appreciate Dean's comments, because I didn't really fully appreciate until recently. We were trying to hire, we were down like 4 or 5 dispatchers, I think 5 dispatchers, and we were trying to hire for those. And I didn't really fully appreciate the burden of training these individuals and bringing them up to speed for the, 3, 4, 6 months that's needed before they can really operate fully on their own. So I had myself a learning curve as to how that training proceeds and the time commitment it is and the burden that it is on the existing dispatchers in order to make sure that happens. So yeah, I'm encouraged by this conversation, whether it's a physical structure as a backup center or also the training component. I think I'm excited to continue this conversation.
Another thought that occurs to me, John, is, we all have training budgets to one degree or another. And if we want to maintain a supply of dispatchers, we could, one way to do it might be to commit our training budget for dispatchers to CVCC, and that seat when it's available, and that assures you a steady stream of income to produce more dispatchers. Of course, I don't know, no guarantee on that one, but it's a lot easier for someone else to put that effort out than it is for us to try to do the training out of hide on our own.
I think that's a good possibility, certainly worthy of exploration. I don't know what the parameters of a training program like this might be, but it's even possible that it might qualify for fast forward funding through the Commonwealth.
I'd like to, on one thing, and I know Jason is familiar with this too, addressing Mr. Dean Rogers' suggestion with the extra console, looking from somebody that's been involved for 30 plus years with some dispatching. if one center goes down and you send one or two other people to go to another active center to fill in, and I'll use two examples. Let's say Amherst system went down, they go to Campbell. Campbell is still going to be dispatching their stuff as well as having Amherst in the same building helping dispatch their stuff. Normally there's total chaos anyway, and the dispatchers do a great job of having controlled chaos. So with another county coming in trying to dispatch out of that, to me, it leaves a greater opportunity for things to slip through the cracks that need attention that won't get it because it'll be so much going on. Two counties being dispatched out of one dispatch center. It would just add to the confusion. That was just my point that I wanted to say about that.
So
That's
an
this
excellent point.
I wonder if we're not creating a false dichotomy here if both ideas aren't good. You know, if CVCC creates a program and have resources on campus, isn't that the, what's the term you use, Matt? Geographically neutral location. And then we each provide a seat that's OJT for those folks coming through their program. You know, I wonder if there's not a way to blend the two concepts to be optimally effective, where you have a standalone facility that's maybe not as large as it might otherwise be because you have training seats at the various localities, for example. So I think it's a great concept. I agree with Robert. It's hard to find these guys. It takes forever to train them. We got myriad challenges, recruiting them, retaining them, compensating them, but making sure we've got a facility if there's a disaster and we need to make sure we're dispatching obviously is critical as well. So I'm just suggesting we leave all the options on the table and pursue them all.
I think, Matt, it's worth querying the public safety directors and even the dispatchers themselves on how, I mean, Dwayne just, that's a real world on the ground situation, and they might not appreciate extra people in the way. So I don't know what the right thing is, but they're the ones whose work day we're affecting here, so they need to be consulted.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and like I said, they have talked over the course of this past year. Some other thing from the radio board perspective, operationally took priority, but it's now coming kind of circling back to this, and so they kind of want to begin to move this idea forward and right, whether it be a geodiverse location, wherever that might be, looking at, even throwing out possibilities of existing structures, municipal structures that are not being used currently, but owned, green sites now that could be built. Like I said, this type of facility wouldn't need to be large, but would need to be appropriately appointed to handle both operational, real life operations of dispatching, as well as potential training. So.
Well, we have such a locality if you need one.
Very good, thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing further on that, we'll move on to the next. How to get our elected PDC members more involved. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for community college. If you want to drop off, you're welcome to. If you want to stick around, you're welcome to as well.
Yeah, we'll drop off now, but you all conduct your meetings so expeditiously. We didn't get a chance to thank you appropriately for your support of the CTE Academy. We're deeply grateful for your endorsement, so thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Members of the committee, let's talk a little bit about how to get our elected officials more involved in our PDC meetings, both in attendance and participation. We do have quorums every time. That's not an issue, but over time, it's healthy for the organization to have our elected folks in speaking out, speaking up, taking leadership positions and so forth. We've got some of our elected folks that haven't come in a long time, and some come faithfully. But we ought to talk a little bit about how, if there's something staff can do, or if the agendas need to be more interesting. We also might want to talk about General Assembly members. You know, it was 30 years ago that we put General Assembly members onto the PDC, and is it a time to rethink that? They come erratically, and I wonder if our goals are different from their goals anymore. So I bring this to you to get some thoughts and feedback on. Mighty quiet. Anybody?
Well, you know, it's really based on the personality of the official. Some are engaged and involved and want to participate, and others you wonder why they even ran for office. And you certainly can't, given who and what they are, I mean, you can't shame them into, you can't publish their attendance. And I don't know what incentive would work when some barely even participate in their principal job. So that's all I have to say. I'm out of there. I'm out of it. I got nothing.
Young Mr. Rogers, you look like you got a big smile on your face. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I always smile when Dean Rogers talks because he says that's all I've got after he's already said too much. But, you know, that's, I think engaging elected officials is all about having a topic that matters to them. I think when you look at Mr. Hardy, he's going to be all over workforce development. He's already excited about it. He's going to be interested in these grants that we're talking about. He's going to challenge how we think about those. So I think some of it is making sure that boards and councils are appointing folks who have some area of interest in the work of the PDC, instead of just appointing somebody who's next on the committee assignment list, if you will. So I think there might be an opportunity for the PDC to get some information to localities prior to committee appointments to say, look, here's a work plan for the coming year. Here's the sort of things we're working on. Is it anything that one of your members has a particular interest in? Other than that, I'm like Dean, I don't have a whole lot to throw at this other than to say be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I like what Frank, I mean, he kind of took what I was going to say, is having that hook in terms of topics. I think that's important. And also, I mean, kind of like we was talking about with the work plan, having that engagement with the local government so that the Bedford County Board of Supervisors understands what we're getting and receiving in return from the PDC. Because I think sometimes the members who are appointed to these is kind of an amorphous organization, not really sure exactly what we're doing here. Am I really making a difference if I come to these meetings? If I mean, does it even matter? But I mean, I think if there is that hook that shows, yes, we are tackling issues that are important to your community and that you do want to be engaged with, you know, that might be helpful.
All right, well, we're going to do it this way. Since Miss Bonnie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, sorry. No, I really don't have anything to add. It's been said.
Okay. Miss Sarah? Okay. One thing, and I agree with now this will be from the elected's point of view. I've enjoyed my time, and I guess you can tell I've kind of thrown myself into it by getting on the state PDC and all of that stuff. But I can see, and I see it in some others, it's kind of like, oh God, I got another committee, or, you know, I already spend 2 days a month, and when my case, it would be 1 day a month, dealing with our meetings and then the other things going on, I'm just there. And I really hate to say it, but I see it among some people that show up at the PDC that they're just like checking the box. I spent a long time observing people and do that. And you can tell when some people come in that they're just checking the box. Their chairman asked them to go and they felt they didn't have a choice or something like that. And I'll be perfectly honest, when I became mayor and Jack said, oh, by the way, one of the things in Amherst is the mayor is on the PDC, I kind of went, well, I don't know what in the hell a PDC is, because I really didn't. And I got him to explain it to me. And then, since I've been coming, I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. And, but that's one of my objectives, I guess I could say from the elected point of view, is I think some of them just think, this is another committee, let's check the box. And I agree with young Mr. Rogers that if you have like Mr. Hardy, who seems to be really excited about the work that the PDC is, that's great, but I know it's hard. And back to older Mr. Rogers, it's hard to pick who's going to make that transition because you don't know. And so you don't know who's going to be there every week. Every month, or who's going to show up once a quarter. So it's difficult on the administrators also. But that's my point of view.
It seems to me that there, one tool, and I'm not sure how to put it into play, would be peer pressure, or not pressure, but if I could get one supervisor to simply report back on whatever that was that their meeting was, they could begin this tradition that, you're expected to take time in the meeting to report on what happened at the Ag Committee, or what happened at the Planning Commission, or what happened at the DSS meeting, and demonstrate. Maybe I'll bring that up at the next retreat. We've got a retreat in August, and try to encourage them to demonstrate to the public how many things they're involved in. That might tweak their personal interest. You're showing the public that you're engaged in a lot of different areas, and we'll take time in the meeting for you to just make a sentence or two about what happened at your last meeting. I don't know. I'm going to try that, I think.
I do know that when Mayor Tweedy and I kind of made the circuit, for the ones we were together, we went together to most of them. There was, and this goes to what you said, Mr. Rogers, older Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers on my left here, if I'm looking at the screen, that some of the supervisors and town council members, when we were explaining, or if it was just me and I was explaining, they didn't have a clue what we did in the PDC, and they didn't know what we were working on in the PDC. Some of them were really surprised when we went and explaining this, I guess you can call it the retreat we had last fall, where everybody came in, got together and tried to do some idea jamming. A lot of people did not realize that the PDC was into as much. There was some questions about different things, and you could tell. And Mr. Rogers, I agree with that. It needs to be something out there that the other council members, supervisor members know what's going on, which may pique some of the electeds' attention, because right now a lot of them don't. They may hear that we went to a PDC meeting or something like that, but they don't know what we did, or they really don't know what. And I think that's one thing we can try to do to expand the knowledge, which may get people to get more active.
So this is young Mr. Rogers, enjoying that brand there. I have to say, I sometimes struggle to explain to elected officials what the PDC does. And I think part of that is we don't have a strong brand, strong project, strong identity in terms of our own prioritization. And I go back to that retreat where we had what? Economic development, workforce development, and tourism. There were three things, and we had a conversation about really making a point of emphasis, something like advanced manufacturing. I think when you use a phrase like advanced manufacturing, elected officials can get excited about that. And then you tell them, hey, we're promoting advanced manufacturing by lobbying for CVTC. Hey, we're promoting advanced manufacturing by partnering with CVCC on a career and technical regional academy. Hey, we're promoting advanced manufacturing by doing a workforce plan to support our local businesses, so that you tie it together to something that they can grab a hold of that makes sense. But when we say we're at the PDC and we might do a grant in a few months for a workforce strategic plan, it doesn't make it real. And I think that's a struggle for folks. So just in my own communication with elected officials about what we're doing, trying to have some keystone piece that makes it accessible to them is important to me. And I don't know that I've found it yet. And maybe it doesn't exist, but I think that's a challenge.
Well, along that lines, Mr. Rogers, one thing I had thrown out, and when the COVID thing came around, it kind of messed it up, but I had mentioned it to Gary. I mentioned it to Sarah in one of our meetings, was that I had wanted to come to the supervisors meetings like in twice a month to a different county, use like Campbell and Bedford, or Campbell and Amherst 1 month. And I was going to compile just what you're saying. This is what we're doing right now. And just come and give them a brief thing, you know, it don't have to be in the chair, but of things that was going on. And I had told Miss Sarah that I was planning on hitting the first one up about mid-April. Mid-March or 1st of April. Well, everything got flipped upside down then. So I think that's one thing that may help with what you said is, you know, if that could be continued. And like I said, it was on the agenda. It was on my plan to start. But then everything got flipped upside down. And I think that would also, when your supervisors or you're trying to come up with something, you know, with one of us walking in there and going, hey, this is what we're doing right now, just, you know, quick few minute blurb, but at least it'll let them know that we're doing something and we're interested in, you know, what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been very, very helpful for me. And you and I can keep talking about those kind of visits or some kind of education information material going to electeds, officials.
Hey, Gary.
Still here?
So do other PDCs in, you know, our immediate region, so New River Valley or Charlottesville, Albemarle, and others, do they have the same struggles that we have in getting electeds engaged?
My sense is they do not, that the elected officials take a much more leadership role than the appointed officials in those PDCs. And those PDCs also have have citizens at large on their boards, as well as government officials. Their boards tend to be larger as well. Even though ours is 23, theirs is larger than that.
Wow. I'm wondering sometimes, gang, if we are sometimes not silent long enough to let the electeds talk when they are there. I mean, we're sort of the get it done people, and my observation and participation has been to move the agenda along. And perhaps we need to take a little more of a, easy for me to say, backseat role and, you know, see if they're going to exercise some leadership.
So I think Bonnie makes a good point, and I heard what she told me. But I also look around.
It wasn't pointed, Frank.
It's the young Rogers, please, just to avoid any confusion. I do look around the screen here and note this is a question to ask elected officials. We're all guessing at what might get them involved, but let's ask them. I think Mr. Tuggle made some good observations, and I'd love to hear from the others. So where is the Zoom call with the elected official representatives asking about their participation and how they might get energized to engage? And I would just harken back to the assessment. I appreciate Gary putting this matter in front of us, because I do recall that the assessment noted that we had sort of a disengaged group of elected officials on the PDC. So that is likely, no doubt, in no small part to what Bonnie's noted, but also a challenge for us to start, to my mind, talking to them directly about why they're not more actively engaged.
Okay, does anybody else have anything? Based on young Mr. Rogers' statement, Gary, I would like to ask the executive board here to task Gary, and Gary, I feel bad to ask you to do so, you know, something above, but maybe work on getting a Zoom meeting with the elected officials that are on the PDC. And Gary, you be on, and then just let the rest be the elected officials, and maybe let us set a conversation to figure out what everybody wants or what's going on. How does the executive feel about that?
You think that just bringing it up, having it on the agenda at one of our regular meetings is not as good as a separate meeting just for the elected folks?
I think my opinion, I think the separate meeting may work, because whereas here, the managers feel like they have a little bit of freedom. I think with the just the elected officials, they're going to be a little freer with what they have to say. So I think it would work better if we had a separate meeting. And that's why I'm throwing it out to the executive committee here, see what they think.
And I think that the mayor's right on this, because we've had conversations at the executive committee before that the managers needed to keep their mouths shut so that our elected officials would speak when we had these meetings. And we had that conversation. But then what happens is one of two things. Either number one, we can't resist and we start yammering away again, because it is, as Bonnie notes, what we do. Or number two, what happens is one of the managers isn't there for the executive committee meeting, and they don't know that we've had a discussion about a particular need for a topic to keep our mouths shut. And then the ball starts rolling, and again, we're back in the same place. It would be good for the electeds to have a time and a space where it's just them to talk about an issue that affects just them.
Does anybody else want to jump in on that? If not, I would like to put it forward, and I just would like a consensus, and I think this would go that Mr. Christie set up a time, and we'll just try to have a virtual elected officials discussion. Can I have the consensus of all the managers present that we're going to give that a shot?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Next item we'll move on was the discussion of interest and report of how the CARES Act money is going to be distributed. Mr. Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few odds and ends to get your thoughts about. Is there any interest in seeing a compilation of how jurisdictions are spending their CARES Act money? It would require you to report in and we compile it and send it out. Any interest in that?
I mean, I'd find that interesting, because we're still in the plan formulation process. So, I mean, that'd be beneficial for us.
I always appreciate a cheat sheet on doing this work. So yeah, bring it on.
Okay. Thank you. We will be organizing on another topic. We'll be organizing a phone electronic meeting with your economic developers and any of your staff that may be involved in grant writing. You know, with all the COVID-19 money, particularly out there, a number of jurisdictions are working on grants that would serve some particular purpose. And we've been thinking about trying to get a meeting where we put everybody together in a box and make sure that the right hand and left hand know what's going on, and not only to see if we can help them, but just to make sure that everybody is aware of things that are happening. So your staff or yourself may be invited to participate in this meeting later on in July, well after the holidays. Any questions about that? We as the manager's lunch is scheduled for the 9th of July. We were going to hold it in Bedford at the County Administration Building. When we talked last, we talked about doing it in person, and that facility gives us plenty of room to space out. It's next Thursday week, and I know Dean says you're gone next Thursday, but do you still want to meet in person? Everybody still good for a person meeting? Frank, you're on vacation next week?
Yeah, I'm traveling to a hot spot, so you won't want to see me for a couple of weeks.
Okay. Very good. And finally, tomorrow night at 5:30, our long-range transportation public hearing is going to be held electronically at connectcentralvirginia2045.com is how you access it. connectcentralvirginia2045.com. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate everybody sticking around and getting this done.
All right. Number 7, did you cover that too? Or Garrett? The regional planning snippets of ideas and what we're thinking about?
It's just information, just
okay.
Things we're working on. So no action, not unless somebody has a question.
All right. Well, thank you. I see the two Rogers must be going to travel. Y'all have safe trips and enjoy your travels. Everybody else have a good time and stay safe. And
Thank you.
See y'all soon.
Thanks, everybody.